morning everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode here on 1950's Farm. Hope you're all well and enjoying, if you're in Britain, the lovely weather, depending on which side of Britain you're on, of course. And if you're everywhere else in the world, I hope it's nice there too and you're enjoying yourselves. Alright, what are we doing? Well, today you can see we have got the combine out in the field. Yes, July has reached us again and it's time to harvest our wheat. So we like on this farm in 1950s, we like the wheat to come nice and early so that we can get it off the field and then begin to concentrate on other jobs that we have to do on the farm as well. We'll just get him in position. It's a bit tricky sometimes to get him there. As you can see, but hopefully we should get him there before I need to unload, which would be really helpful. There we go. Probably bring him back one more. There we go. I think that should be alright now. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so as I say, we like to get the wheat in nice and early so that we can concentrate and get on with everything else that we've got to do on the farm. And as I say, there's no better time than July. And then we'll be down to muck spreading and ploughing and all the other good stuff that we get on with. So normally the Tuesday video would be a chatty video, but I'm gonna try my hardest to do some things differently to what I've been doing them. So I've been sort of coming on YouTube now for a little while and saying, oh, you know, my views are not very good, I'm getting really down, blah 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 blah, boring, right? Stop whining on Ginger. I know that's what everyone's saying, right? And I was talking to my little brother and he said to me, you know, and I was sort of saying to him, it sort of gets me down a bit, and he said, well, the definition of madness, do you know what that is? And I said, yeah. And he said, what is it? I said, it's to do the same thing over and over and over and over again and expect a different result. He said, exactly. He said, and that's what you're doing with YouTube. You're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, but yet you expect a different result. And I went away and I was thinking about that, and I thought, do you know what? He's absolutely right. So, as I say, we're going to try some things a little bit different. So I think we're going to need to unbury him. Well, not unbury him because he's not buried, but unstuck him. Is unstuck him a word? I'm not sure. Oh dear. He got so annoyed at being stuck in there, he just left. I saw it, I don't want working for you anymore. Oh. Oh dear. Oh, no, that's the wrong way. That's the wrong way. Oh dear. So, as you can see, one of the ways that I'm going to start doing things differently is I'm going to start doing obstacle courses and getting my tractor stuck. I do apologise, I'm going to have to do this the horrible way, because I really can't get that out of there. It doesn't have enough it doesn't have enough hosses under the bonnet for me to get that out of there. Right, here we go. Anyway, hopefully that shouldn't happen again, because this is the only time when we go round, obviously right round the edge of the fields and stuff. So yeah, hopefully it shouldn't do it. So yeah, as I was saying, normally this Tuesday episode would be a chatty episode. I'm wondering if people are a little bit tired of the chatty episodes and sort of, as I say, just in general, you know, it's just sort of doesn't seem to be working. I'm not sure why. I'm really not sure why, but you know, I guess I could spend forever and a day trying to figure out why, when I could just change it and just keep trying new things to see whether they work or not. Because as I say, when this series started off, you know, we were getting, you know, sort of in 1,000 views, you know, for you know, quite a few episodes in a row, and now, you know, they're struggling to get 50. Whether it's because it's taking so long, I don't know. Bloody tree! I hate trees. I can't even find the tree. There it is. Oh, you would disappear just as I did it, wouldn't you? Honestly. Yeah, you don't need to drive too far forward, friend. Right, hopefully now. Oh no, we're gonna have one area left, aren't we? That's up around the dairy. We're gonna have an area up there, so we'll move him around there. But anyway, yeah. So as I say, I'm just gonna try some new things, some different things. I'm also gonna hopefully be doing a new series. Now, this is not a guarantee because the series is going to rely on one other person, and if that person agrees, then there might well be a new series. I underestimated how long Ray sits looking at farming simulator stuff. I went round there the other day, and I said to him, I said, "How's it going, Ray?" Because you know he's in his 80s, 90s, something like that. Can't remember. He's old. That's all we need to know. And I went round there the other day, and I said to him, I said, "How you getting on, Ray?" And he said, "I'm all right." I said, "You're a good man, mate, yeah." I said, "What you up to?" He said, He said, "I love this computer that you got me." So I said, "You do?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "It's fantastic." I said, "Good." He said, he said, "I'm really mastering farm sim now." So I said, "Good." I said, "I'm pleased." I said, "Gives you something to do, doesn't it?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "It's better than doing bloody Sudoku puzzles, you know, all day long, and crosswords and rubbish like that." He said, "And sit watching the crap that's on telly." I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm really loving it." So I said, "Good." I said, "You using that okay?" Yeah, fine." He said, "You're a good teacher." He said, "It's fine." He said, "I know about as much as you do." He said, "And you know enough, so that's good enough for me." So I said, "Yeah." I said, "Fair enough." So I said, "What are you up to?" So he said, "There then," he said, "I want to come to you about something." So I said, "Go on then." I said, "But technically I've come to you, Ray." He said, "Yeah, I know." He said, "But," he said, "I want to talk to you about something." So I said, "Go on." I said, "Talk to me about it. What do you want to talk about?" He said, "I've seen this thing on the internet." So I said, "Right." So he said, "And it's a challenge." So I said, "Right." So he said, "It's a farming sim challenge." So I said, "Well, I kind of roughly guessed that was where he was going with that, yeah." So he said, "Do you fancy doing it?" So I said, "What, a bit of like sort of competition against each other in my spare time?" So he said, "No." He said, "Do you fancy doing it?" So I said, "Well, I just said." And he said, "No, no, no." He said, "I mean, do you fancy doing it as a YouTube series? Me and you." So I said, "Me and you?" I said, "It'll never work, Ray." He said, "Why is that?" I said, "Because you like to be your own boss and I like to be my own boss." I said, "And I've got a feeling," I said, "and it's just a feeling," I said, "but I think it's a fairly, you know, sort of accurate one." I said, "You're going to want to be the boss and I work for you." He said, "That's exactly how it's going to work." He said, he said, "The brilliant thing is," he said, "is you still play it all." So I said, "Right." He said, "You still play it all." I said, "Go on." He said, "But I'm in it." I said, "How are you in it?" He said, "Well, I talk through it." He said, "Like, I just keep coming in and there's a bit of dialogue between us, there's a bit of, you know, sort of interaction between us, but you're doing the work and you record it for your YouTube channel. He said, I don't want my face on bloody television. So I said, right, I said, you wouldn't have anyway. He said, well, you've started putting your face on there. So I said, yeah, I know. I said, but I'll just do a few jokes and that. I said, because I haven't had many videos come out over the last sort of, you know, week, 2 weeks. I said, and so that people sort of don't forget about the channel, don't lose interest. I said, I've, you know, been releasing a few joke videos. I said, like, you know, I said, just a bit of fun, really. So he said, yeah. He said, fair enough. He said, but he said, I don't want that. So I said, well, I wouldn't do that anyway. I said, the world's not ready for your face, Ray. So I said, don't panic. So anyway, he said, do you fancy it? So I said, well, I said, we could try it. Yeah, he said, excellent. I said, when did you want to do it? So he said, well, he said, I was thinking we could start in the next week or so, because he said, the challenge has just come out. So I said, well, what's the challenge? So he said, it's a good one. So I said, yeah. Well, I said, well, what is it? So he said, I've seen this thing. He said, and you take over a farm, there's quite a bit of debt, and you have to sort of get on with it. So I said, right. So he said, but he said, we could change the story a little bit. So I said, we could. He said, yeah. He said, well, I'm thinking for our version. So I said, right. He said, I own the farm. You're my grandson or something, or you're just someone looking for a job. So I said, right. He said, and then, you know, he said, then you, you know, sort of come along and we're sort of, you know, we get on with it. So I said, right. I said, well, I said, we'd have to do the grandson, really. I said, because the other one's kind of been done already. I said, and to be fair, I wouldn't want to try and go up against that. I said, because, you know, I said, I just don't have the talent, skill, or anything that the other guys got. I said, so we'd have to kind of go more with the grandson sort of kind of thing. So he said, yeah, that's fine. So he said, you up for it? So I said, yeah, we'll do it. So I said to him, I said, it'll have to be, like, we'll have to record it like, on a Monday. Oh, can't be Monday. So I said, right, okay. I said, oh, it'll have to be a Thursday or Friday then. I said, because like the rest of the week I'm doing 1950's. I said, but I can do Sunny Side Up. I said, like, I can sort of kind of do that with this. I said, as long as this doesn't take long. Yeah. He said, can't really do Thursday and Fridays. I don't really want to do the weekend. So I said, right. I said, okay. I said, well, it's not really going to work then, is it? So he said, yeah, but he said, I'm only doing voiceover bits. Couldn't I just record my bits and then you put it in? So I said, well, yeah. I said, all right. Yeah. I said, I suppose we could do that. He said, yeah. He said, we could do that like on a Tuesday or Wednesday when I'm not doing so much. I said, well, I said, yeah, but I said, like I said, I'm still doing 1950's. He said, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, don't worry about that. He said, we'll do our project. He said, by the way, so I said, yeah. He said, if it makes you a millionaire, I said, which it won't, Ray. I said, it won't. Don't get no, you know, don't go beyond yourself here, son. He said, but if it does, I said, yeah. He says, I want at least 3/4 of it. I said, how's that? He said, well, it was my idea, wasn't it? He said, and plus anyway, he said, you got to pay to have my voice in it. And yes, I said, all right, Ray. I said, fair enough, mate. I said, you can have 3/4 of it. I said, I tell you what, I said, if it makes me a millionaire, I said, you can have the lot. So he said, really? I said, yeah. He said, why would you do that? I said, because it ain't going to make us a millionaire, Ray. I said, don't worry about it. I said, don't, you know. I said, we'll be lucky if we be a pound's heir from it. And he's like, he goes, oh, he said, it's like that, is it? I said, it's like that, I'm afraid, Ray, yeah. I said, unfortunately. He said, well, he said, I thought you was monetised now. So I said, no, I'm not monetised, Ray. I said, but I am allowed now to put super thanks on my YouTube shorts. I said, that's pretty much as far as it's allowed to go. So he said, oh, right. He said, oh, okay, fair enough. So I said, yeah. I said, don't get no grand ideas here, Ray. I said, it's not happening, son. So he's he's already sort of kind of in his own mind. He's already sort of, you know, at superstar status on YouTube, and he's not actually done anything yet. I said to him, I said, like, you should do your own YouTube channel. No, he said, I'm not doing that. I said, yeah, you should. I said, you do a lot better than what I would, mate. He said, why is that? I said, well, because I said you're likable. He said, you're likable. I said, yeah. I said, but I said, I don't know. I said, that just seems to be, I said, like, I said, I think you'd do better. I said, like, I do honestly. I said, but I said, never mind. I said, anyway. I said, what are you up to today on the actual farm? Then he started going through all what he's up to. Anyway, this kind of beginning now, telling you the story about Ray, has kind of messed up the new way of doing things. So what I'm going to do is, without further ado, I'm going to go over to some time lapse, and I'm hoping within this time lapse, if memory on the computer allows, I should get that field harvested. And that's kind of one of the new ways we're going to do stuff, rather than sort of jobs trickling into 3 or 4 episodes. I'm going to try and get jobs done in 1 episode if I can, so we can just keep moving on and get this save so it is moving along a little bit quicker, because I said at the beginning, it's going to be a long-term save. It's going to be, it's going to be a save that, as long as I'm around and as long as I'm doing YouTube, then it will be sort of years long, this save. I know some people might not like that, but one of the other things as well is that, again, my little brother said, you try and do everything for everyone on YouTube, and he said, like, it's your channel, do stuff that you enjoy, and because you enjoy it, it will come across in the videos, and then other people will enjoy it. He said, there are people that do enjoy your stuff, he said, because like, I read the comments and what have you. He said, so there are people out there that do enjoy the stuff that you do. He said, but he said, like, try doing some stuff for yourself, and do it that way. So yeah, just try new things. Anyway, I'm going to switch over to some time lapse, and I'll see you all in a little while. Bye for now.
Walking down the whiskey roads, dusty dreams, a heavy load. Night will fall where the sunlight fades, hearts are wandering aimless strays. Old guitar and a lonesome tune, stars will light the prairie moon. Feet are tired but the spirit's high, whiskey roads we drank the sky. Dusty dreams and open plains, aching hearts with no restraint, finding hope in a sip so deep. On whiskey roads we sow and reap, rustic barns and silent fields, broken dreams that time conceals. Yet we march on through the haze, in our hearts a fire blaze. Dusty dreams and open plains, aching hearts with no restraint, finding hope in a sip so deep. On whiskey roads we sow and reap, ruddy boots and miles to go, every shadow tells us so. Through the pain and through the cheer, dusty dreams bring us near. Dusty dreams and open plains, aching hearts with no restraint, finding hope in a sip so deep. On whiskey roads we sow and reap, muddy boots and miles to go, every shadow tells us so. Through the pain and through the cheer, dusty dreams bring us near.
Well, the preacher man says I'm going to hell, but my baby knows I treat her swell. She climbs on back when the moon turns black, wraps her arms around my leather jacket. Townies call us the devil's crew. Cops flip their pads when we roll through, but her nails dig in when I hit third gear. That's the only law I'm gonna hear. Black leather blues, baby, hold on tight. We're midnight bound on a two-wheeled flight. They'll never catch us, we're ghosts in the smoke. Just me, my girl, and the thunder we stoke. Check the mirror, one headlight coming fast, but the soul hog's got a half-mile pass. Grab my waist, don't look back, eat our tuss, Jack. Say we're public foes, but they don't know where the wild wind blows. We'll disappear where the highway ends, just grease stains and a wanted sketch. Black leather blues, never lose. They'll find my jack nailed to a pole, but the legend grows every tank gets stole. Through that old cafe, hair in the wind like a movie frame. You were smiling like you found your way, and girl, you're glowing brighter every day. I remember back when things were rough, young and lost, thinking love was enough. But time has been so kind to you. Now you shine in everything you do. My old flame, you're burning bright, even more now than you did that night. I ain't bitter, no, I'm proud to see you bloomed into who you're meant to be. Yeah, my heart might ache just a bit, 'cause damn girl, you're now the perfect hit. For a second round, just amazed at who you've become now. From wild hearts and late night calls to the beauty standing proud and tall. My old flame, you're burning bright, even more now than you did that night. I ain't bitter, no, I'm proud to see you bloomed into who you're meant to be. And if he's the one who holds you tight, he better thank his lucky place in this heart of mine. I took my baby out last Friday night. I told her, darling, you're my heart's delight. She just rolled her eyes, said, skip the fluff, is that a third to a fourth? Now you're talking tough. I saved up my cash, bought a diamond ring. She said, that's cute, but don't mean a thing. What really thrills me, sets my soul on fire, is a chopped up coupe with dual exhaust pipes. Oh, V8 sweetheart, motorized queen, loves that engine more than she loves me. She don't want roses, don't need no spark, just a flathead rumble in a moonlit park. I took her to the drive and tried to steal a kiss. She was checking out a Hemi, man, what did I miss? I said, baby, why you treating me so mean? She said, talk to me when you got a supercharged machine. Oh, V8 sweetheart, motorized queen, loves that engine more than she loves me. If I ain't got pistons, I ain't got a shot, guess I'll trade my heart for a 4-barrel car. Now listen here, Daddy-O, I've learned my fate. If you want to win her, you gotta customize your date. So I'm saving my dough, working day and night, gonna build a hot rod that's out of sight. Oh, V8 sweetheart, one fine day, you'll be riding shotgun when I speed away. Till then I'm just a fool in a jalopy dream, but she'll be mine when I'm the king of the drag strip scene. Vroom, vroom, baby, wait for me.
Sadness in my life without a message. You left one day.
Right, so I'm back. There we go, we've harvested a field in one day. Not bad actually, it's yielded really well again. You know, considering that back in the 1950s, you know, sort of fertilisation was fairly simple compared to today's, you know, sort of concoctions that we mix up to try and get the very best yields. It'd be interesting to see the yield comparisons between the 1950s and the modern day, and whether modern day breeds and varieties of wheat are far more efficient. I mean, I'm assuming there would be, you know, because there's far more people in the world now to feed, but or whether sometimes we don't need to mess with the way we used to. I mean, it's a bit like ploughing. You know, I'm a firm advocate of ploughing. You know, not just because it was my job once. You know, what I did sort of most of the day, every day, or most of the year, every day, and you know, but more just because I do believe that when you plough, you're making a blank canvas, and you're giving yourself a chance, and the farm a chance to sort of start again and set the, you know, if you've had disease, or if you've had, you know, black grass or ryegrass, or, you know, and you know, across the world, whatever weeds it is that you know, sort of dominate your crops and your areas, it gives you a chance to kind of plough all that in and sort of try and start again. So you know, but it's not the way the world is today. I mean, you know, sort of even on the farm that I worked on, you know, they do probably half as much ploughing as what they did when I was there. You know, I'd like to say it was because that no one was as good as me. That isn't the case, unfortunately. You know, it's just the way the world is going. You know, that they're using Tyrannos now, horse Tyrannos, horse Jokers. You know, and you know, that's the way they're sort of deciding to do it. You know, and the way that, you know, they are doing it. But as I say, back in the 1950s, you know, ploughing was very much a part of rotation, and you know, sort of what farms did, basically to give them a blank canvas and to start again. And not only that as well, I mean, on this farm, you know, we obviously applied manure to our fields, and so therefore, you know, ploughing is sort of essential because it gives you an opportunity to mix it in. You know, I think you'd have to say as well, in the 1950s, you know, probably cultivators and what I call mixing discs, you know, weren't around, or probably weren't as good if they were around back in the 1950s. But as I say, but it would be interesting to say, because the amount of wheat again that we've got off this field is unbelievable, really. And it's good, you know, because it's good for our bank account. But you know, we have filled an entire silo of wheat, and yeah, we're on silo number 2, and before we start the soybeans, which will be in that field over there, and this field here, before we start the soybeans, you know, we're going to have to get these bins emptied. But yeah, so anyway, as I say, slightly different way of doing things today. Hopefully this will carry on forward now. I hope you've enjoyed it. I really hope you enjoy the new style of music that I'm going to try and put to this series, and just try and shake things up a little bit, see what happens. So yeah, thanks ever so much for watching. I've really enjoyed having your company. If you've liked what you've seen today, why not give it a thumbs up? If you like, you know, me and the channel and everything, why not hit that subscribe button? It's absolutely free to do so, and you make a ginger very happy, so that can't be a bad thing, surely. But as I say, thanks ever so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Bye for now.